So good morning, everybody. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, honoured guests. Welcome to day 2 of Investopia 2025. And our panel, as was introduced, Family Enterprises, a cornerstone of economic evolution. So by way of introduction, my name is George Triplow. I'm responsible for the family office practice at Northern Trust, based here in the region. And before I asked our esteemed panel to introduce themselves, as we think about the title of our panel, it's often quoted that family enterprise are the lifeblood of the region, accounting for 60% of GDP and nearly 80% of the workforce. And indeed, when we look at that globally, that figure is 70 and 60% respectively. So I'm keen with the panel that we discuss a number of areas around this, and I've labelled these in a number of areas. So is to really think through what is that evolution, what's that looked like for us in the region, what's driven the evolution over time, and most importantly, I think, how is that sustainable on an ongoing basis? And then some challenges. It's not easy. We know how all nations have developed and families have developed, and so how that really fits. So to the panel, I think, first of all, I'm grateful, very grateful to be joined by, 3, wonderful key families from not just the region, but wider, internationally and globally. So ladies first in the middle, Paulina Jakubek from Slovakia, Paul Desmarais from Canada to my left, and then finally His Excellency Khaled Al Fahim from Abu Dhabi, the home team. So I'd like each panelist, please, just to briefly introduce themselves, and with that talk a little bit about their family, but weave into that or answer that sort of first question, really around, what is the evolution? So ladies first, Pauline, do you want to lead off?
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Can everyone hear me? Wonderful. So my name is Paulina Jakubec, and I'm the Managing Director of a newly established single-family office. Back in 2018, I started being involved in our family enterprises in 2 of our portfolio companies. And in January this year, we actually successfully exited our core enterprise, which is Slovakia's largest confectionery producer and a key regional distributor in the region. And we've set up a single-family office to focus on implementing multi-generational investment strategies to preserve future wealth and drive long-term value. We also continue to operate several businesses, a rubber manufacturing company in the region and a residential hotel complex in the Slovak mountain ranges. And to answer your question, George, I think what we've seen certainly in our family and other family businesses in the world is that currently there's a significant generational transfer of wealth taking place. And as a new generation of leaders gets involved in either running the family businesses or family offices and families are driving an economic shift towards bridging traditional legacy industries with the emerging growing sectors and combining that with investments into nascent technologies. Certainly, as family offices, having the benefit of patient capital, I think we're able to allocate higher proportions of our wealth and portfolios into alternative investments, which really allows us to be able to benefit from potential high returns of nascent emerging sectors and really act as a catalyst for innovation, given our ability to make investments that are liquid for longer periods and higher risk. So I think that's one of the significant changes that we're seeing as part of the evolution and economic transition at the moment.
Wonderful, wonderful. Khaled?
Good morning. It's an early session, so I hope we try and wake everybody up with us. My name is Khaled Al Fahim. I represent the Al Fahim family, one of the oldest merchants in Abu Dhabi. And when I say oldest, and compared to other countries, that is very young. We were blessed by the economy, the leadership of this city, and we grew together. My late grandfather, which was the founder of the business, was a kind, humble, and generous merchant, and he was one of the first people that was lucky to be part of this beautiful ecosystem. I represent the first from the third generation that joined the family business. The business is like many other family businesses in Abu Dhabi and in the UAE. We represent different international companies. And as a board member at the Chamber of Commerce, we are now focusing on how to get the family businesses into a established and a mature state, similar to what we have and we'll hear from our colleagues on the panel.
That's great, Khaled. Thank you very much for sharing. Paul.
Great. Well, thank you for having us. Paul Demre. I'm a third-generation member of the Demre family, but I also view myself as a first-generation entrepreneur. In terms of the third-generation business, my grandfather founded a group called Power Corporation of Canada. The name is totally misleading because we're actually a financial services holding. We own the largest insurance company in Canada, and we own one of the largest mutual fund companies in Canada. And through those companies, we are investors in brands such as Empower Retirement. So we're the second largest provider of retirement services in the United States after Fidelity. We own 7% of Franklin Templeton. We own Irish Life and many kind of other brands globally. In terms of being a first-generation entrepreneur, each generation of our family has reinvented itself. And so I often say we're a family in business and not a family business, because a family business would mean being tied to a single entity, but a family in business gives us the flexibility to transform our group generation after generation. And so if I look at our family history, my grandfather started in shipping and newspapers. My father transformed ourselves into a financial services group, and I have launched an alternative asset manager, which co-founded in 2016, and have grown to about 30 billion of assets, which makes us the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing players in Canada. And so in terms of the mega changes and what, we need to be aware of, I think this is a really exciting time for family groups. I think the speed at which technology is evolving gives family businesses that have a longer-term horizon a unique opportunity to take advantage of that. And I think the geopolitics are really exciting for families, because in many ways, in many Western countries, the stability of leadership and the stability of policy is just no longer there. And in many ways, having family partners that have a consistent set of values and will remain that way for generations, I think gives us an advantage. And so, in our case, we've had many partnerships with other families around the world that are now on their third generation, and I think that's an advantage that we will continue to use.
That's great. I fully agree with all of those. And when we look, we're talking geopolitical, as you said. As Khaled drew on, a young nation, as Paulina said, families developing. And so the evolution is key. And obviously, as Khaled again touched on, the leadership and obviously the merchant families have helped industrialize the region over the last 30 years, with the arrival of different technologies, the ability, a greater skilled workforce, etc. But what is going to continue to drive that evolution? Where do we look there? Is it, innovation? Is it entrepreneurship? Job creation? How's that wealth distributed? And Khaled, I know you're, closely connected with the Abu Dhabi Chamber, in the work they're doing. How do you see that, wider than just your family, but across our whole ecosystem?
George, I'll give you a small example of our family to start with, and then we'll continue. In our family, it's one of the first Abu Dhabi-based families that went through the evolution of governance and structure. And this is very important for continuity. And this is something that we're seeing a lot is because of the young nature of a lot of these companies, the governance and the succession planning is not all there. And that's where the Chamber's role will play in trying to educate the family businesses on the benefits on moving to the family office system or into the trust system and away from the structure. And all this needs innovation mindset. It requires openness to change and looking at opportunities. We need to look beyond the traditional business of joint ventures, being the agents of a product, being a trader, a representative. We need to be more innovative. We need to invest beyond. I sit on a board of a tech company which was impossible to convince the older generation on the benefits of being in that tech company. And we are seeing the benefits of being that. I represent the family into an investment company in Bahrain, and now that is a difficult discussion. So we're there. You need to focus on the innovation and how to move forward beyond the traditional business.
And do you think that trading mentality, will now change with generations?
I think with the new generation and with the education that some of the younger family members are having, trading is not exciting enough. So a lot of them want to invest in tech. A lot of them you'd see, I think that we have maybe the highest number of food trucks around in the town. So trading is not exciting. So they'll need to learn their steps, but they need the guidance, and that's the role for people like the Chambers. We are blessed here and honored to have our Minister of Economy and Minister of SME who are supportive to the ecosystem, and this is a blessing to have in this ecosystem.
I mean, that's a great segue, Paul, to how your family started. You misrepresented almost, but how your family sort of pivoted, and what you see as those sort of key drivers of the evolution.
Yeah, and so I mean, we evolved from a very traditional conglomerate model to one that is much more kind of focused. And I think that as technological changes happen and as the world becomes more uncertain, having a focus on an area where you have a right to win and a competitive advantage is something that is really important. And so we ended up shedding all of our non-financial services businesses and then focus on financial services. And then, to the point made earlier on the kind of need to be on top of technology, my first role when I joined the group, my father actually asked me to be the disruptive force in the group. And what's interesting there is we actually ended up founding a rival business to one of our businesses in 2016 that was entirely technology-based. In this case, it's a company in Canada called Wealthsimple, and that business today has 3 times more clients than our legacy business. And so, very dynamic shifting. And so for us, I said, in today's environment, it's never been more important to focus on a few things where you feel you could have a right to win, and then make sure that you're investing in the next generation of kind of technology to make sure that you stay ahead. And because the times where as a family you could be just complacent, I think are long gone.
Yes, no, I mean, complacency is a killer, I think. So Paulina, from the evolution, we're moving away from trading to complacency. How does that look, for you, for our Slovakian family that's recently had an event in regard to a change? What does sustainability look like for you and your family?
So I think very similarly to actually what Paul mentioned as well, even though my father created a legacy business that he ran for over 30 plus years in Slovakia, he's very entrepreneurial at heart, and that entrepreneurial spirit really runs in the family. And so even as we transition towards wealth management, I think as a family office, what we will be very keen to do, and I think we're seeing that trend more globally, is to adopt a more active investment approach in our activities, and to really focus a lot on direct co-investments as well, both to reflect that entrepreneurial spirit but also to leverage our domain expertise and to be able to drive strategic direction in the portfolio companies that we wish to invest in. And I think we are seeing that trend reflected increasingly more so in the activities of family offices.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you very much. So now we come on to, how this is sustainable. And I think this is leading from Paulina's last point. So statistically, it's often said that the first generation creates the wealth, the second generation stewards it, and the third really consumes it. So with 90% of the original wealth lost by generation 3, it's quite a stark statistic, and it is pretty well proven. So, that is concerning, and in a world that we have seen change so much, from the young families we're talking about to those that are more traditional in industrialized and developing nations. Paul, maybe you could just touch on the values or the principles of which, you now govern, the family by for this sustainability. That I think would be really interesting.
And so I think today, in today's entrepreneurial world, being very clear on what your values are is really important. For the firm I founded, Sagar, we have 5 values: entrepreneurship, innovation, rigor, authenticity, and collaboration. Those are the pillars of how we promote people, how we hire people, how we build the business, and in many ways are built on the values that my family have. And so my family, we have, first of all, value of hard work, because ultimately we believe that the only thing you can never lose is your work ethic and your education. And so as long as you have work ethic and education, you will always bounce back as a family. Other values we have as a family are responsibility, because ultimately you cannot succeed unless you care for your community and you care for your people. And so responsibility is an important thing. I chair actually the large donor program at the United Way in Montreal. I chaired the whole United Way 3 years ago. My father chaired the United Way before me. And so a real responsibility to our communities is something that we care about. Empathy is really important, being able to kind of listen to people and hear their issues. And then humility. I think, in order to be a family that succeeds in the long term, being humble and being curious is really, really important, because the amount of things that could evolve to dramatically change the field on which you play are constantly evolving. And so these values have played a really important role in keeping us sharp. And so today I'm one of 4 boys in our family. All 4 are CEOs. 2 of them have now built unicorns. 2 of them were Forbes 30 under 30s for their different businesses. And so I think the only reason why we are 4 third-generation people that have kind of, I'd say, beaten the curse is because of those values that live very strongly in our family.
That's very interesting. Pauline?
So growing up, my dad was very conscious of this statistic about actually losing generational wealth.
Curse of the third generation.
Indeed, so I'm actually 2nd generation, but yes, he often repeated that sentiment to me. And similarly, he very much instilled the values of hard work and discipline, and actually generating value more than you spend. So that's really at the cornerstone also, and at the heart of our thinking going forward. And as part of that process, we're really also looking to implement the right mechanisms and the right governance framework in place to really make sure that we can steward our wealth responsibly and continue to drive growth in a very responsible manner. So that's something we're very acutely looking at. And we're also looking, since we are really transitioning to a large extent from business and running operational businesses to also wealth management, we understand the importance of surrounding ourselves with experts, also in terms of setting up our investment committees and making sure we have the right expertise to guide us in making the right investment decisions. So that's something we're very acutely aware of, and we've been working on as part of succession planning as well.
Yeah, no, fully aligned with all of those. I think, Khalid, do you want to touch on, and I know you're smiling now at me, but, are we in family?
George, you're putting all the pressure on the third generation, so we
know.
need to defend ourselves.
So are you then in the third generation still family enterprise 1.0?
I think we are in our family a little bit advanced to 1.0, but I think it's a general statement that a lot of family businesses in the region are still at the 1.0 in terms of succession and governance, and this is something that we are working closely. Our Ministry of Economy has also a program for family businesses in the UAE to evolve beyond what I call 1.0. I want to defend the third generation, if you allow me, and say that anything in this world, when you build and you prepare it for the next people coming. So if you're building a house, you need to decide how many rooms because you're expecting the number of people. When you're building a company and it's a third generation of more than 100 people, in the third generation, that company needs to be ready for those hundreds. And if that number grows, it needs to grow with it. So maybe we have a different system here that has the Sharia involvements when it comes to inheritance that is not available in the Western world. And that limits the flexibility that you would have with decision making. So third generations, I think there are a couple in the room. Hopefully they will change the proverb. I think it's Chinese.
No, and it's very easy for these families that are concentrated on, one or, maybe two things, but His Highness's view on, it's unfair just to do one thing. Is your view around that?
Well, I think it is unfair for any Emirati, and this is one of the wise leaders that told me that it's unfair for an Emirati to do one thing. There are very few of us, and I think there are a lot of opportunities and to be part of this ecosystem.
Yeah.
We need to do multiple things. So this is an invite to all the Emiratis in the room that we need to be doing multiple things so to be part of this progressive economy.
And before we leave this quickly, Paul, just back to you. So picking up on both of those points, but particularly Khaled, your principle, authenticity. No, I'm talking to Paul. In regard to your principle of authenticity. Can you explain how that fits into the values?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to attract the best talent in the world today, you need to be able to operate in a way that's perfectly aligned with your values. And so ultimately, if you have to portray something that is different than your reality, the amount of energy you have to expend trying to portray that thing is huge. And so by having a value of authenticity, it allows you to align everything in your life with your objectives and be much more efficient in your energy expenditure. And so authenticity in those 5 values actually, I think, one of the most important ones because it drives significant, I'd say, life efficiency, which is important because as long as you could build something that is representative of who you are, I think there's no loss of energy.
No, great. So before we move on to the next question, I'm the moderator, so I get the last word. If I was a G3 family, which I'm not, but my grandfather taught my father and me 3 rules. Work hard, play hard, treat everybody as you would be expected to be treated yourself, and learn to laugh at yourself. Yeah. But anyway, while we stop laughing, the next thing and the final thing I want to cover is challenges. So, not that I'm saying it will go wrong, but we've seen it go wrong, and no doubt it will go wrong. So what are the challenges for families now? We've talked about the evolution, we've talked about how sustainable it is, and I know you talked earlier on, Khaled, about succession planning, and I would suggest that, around succession planning, governance, and balancing the family interests, which I think, Paul, you've covered very well in diversification, would be areas, but I'm open to any others. I don't know. Paul, would you like to start on that one? The challenges?
Yeah, I mean, look, the world is accelerating at an incredible pace. And so for us, do we have the right talent and the right seats? And is that talent willing to evolve? Because what worked for us in the last 30 years with the rapid evolution of AI, with the geopolitics around the world. I mean, we as a family have always been very close to China, but we've also been very close to the United States. You know, is that even feasible as a Canadian family today? Are we going to be forced to make choices? You know, those are major questions that we need to face. You know, will our business model, which is life insurance, be totally disrupted by new models, you know, powered by artificial intelligence? Those are questions that we need to be asking ourselves constantly and making sure that we're adopting and that we continue to disrupt ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that we've done really well is be at the forefront of disruption. My mom at 68 years old founded the largest, you know, AI consulting company in Canada. And so, you know, it permeates our family and it needs to continue to do so.
No, perfect. Khalid, what do you think?
Well, I think, like anything, the main challenge is the family relationship. And this is culturally here affects a lot of things. Opportunities are there. We are in a growing economy and focusing on the opportunities and separating the family business, and maybe use Paul's slogan, family in business and not family business, is the way forward. So maybe we need to adopt that in families and focus on what we do within the family and what we don't do, and what we focus on business and we separate from the family.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. That's great guidance. Paulina, finally, you get the last word.
So I think for us, as we transition to a new phase of our kind of evolution as a family, the rules of the game when it comes to running operational businesses and making financial investments are very different. So one of the core challenges for us is navigating how to manage the world of wealth management successfully. And also to the point Paul made, really we're seeing a very fast-paced evolution in many nascent technologies and emerging sectors, and particularly as in my family there's a generational difference and the passing of the baton. There's partially an education piece as well about the new technologies and sectors and what that entails and what we should focus on. Partially that also will be reflected in that careful balancing act when it comes to navigating our business priorities and family interests. Namely, just to, for example, look at decisions around whether we should decide to educate ourselves and, let's say, invest in digital assets, which are very scary and unfamiliar to my father, whereas potentially closer to me, and I'm more aware of the fact that perhaps this is something we should focus on and educate ourselves in to make sure we can make the right cautious and potentially high return decisions. But yes, there's going to be challenges around the fast pace of change, innovation, and an educational piece and bridging that generational gap between the two main decision makers in my family.
I mean, it looks great. I mean, I could continue this conversation for another half an hour, 40 minutes. Fantastic. And thank you all very much for your insights. So I think, you know, let me leave this by saying, look, family enterprise is in good space, it's in a great form. And if I were to leave you with 4 things, let's take these 4 things away. Disruptive forces, food trucks, surrounded by experts, and work hard, play hard. Please join me in thanking the panel.